Hey everybody, we are live on Facebook for our latest Daily Thought. Thanks for joining me, whether you're joining live or whether you are watching this a little bit later on, which I know lots of people do. We're going to be continuing today from Luke 16, verses 16 through to 18. Only 3 verses today, and I'm going to be reading from them in just a couple of moments. We'll see if anyone else is going to join us live first of all. I know there's a few people on, so do say hello if you are there. It's always nice to know who's around. Morning, Dan. It's the first one I've done actually. Last week I had a quieter week, so Meg and John took these on, and this week Meg's having a quiet week. Are you right, Bear? So I'm going to be doing today's reading. Looking forward to it, as long as Bear is quiet. Hi, Carl. Hi, Neil. So if you've got a Bible, it'd be great if you want to follow it with me. As I say, it's only 3 verses today, so quite an easy read. So let's read then from Luke chapter 16, verses 16 through to 18. It says this: until John the Baptist... I'll start again. Until John the Baptist, the law of Moses and the messages of the prophets were your guides. But now the good news of the kingdom of God is preached, and everyone is eager to get in. But that doesn't mean that the law has lost its force. It is easier for heaven and earth to disappear than for the smallest point of God's law to be overturned. For example, a man who divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, and anyone who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. I hope you were able to catch that. And as I say, it's only 3 verses long. But the passage that we're reading there is a challenging one in some ways, because it talks about things that maybe get us chatting or thinking or discussing our opinions on certain things. But just focusing on the first part, John the Baptist came as a kind of in-between between the kind of Old Testament law and prophets era and then the kingdom of God era, in terms of the time when Jesus was obviously going to come. So John was kind of like a middle stopgap in between those that prepared the way for Jesus. We know that. But Jesus was clear in this, in that although he was now around, although Jesus was here, the law and the prophets era had ended in terms of what was the Old Testament. But the era in which Jesus was now leading and a part of didn't mean that the laws that were written by God were changed. He was very firm on that and taught, if anything, firmer than Moses on these on this kind of passage and on these ideas of laws and on these ideas of what it is to actually truly follow God. And then he goes specifically to talk about divorce. And now, whilst I haven't got time in a minute or so to talk theologically about divorce and about what Jesus says in these words about committing adultery, etc., what's really important here is to see the context of where Jesus was living, what time he was living in, whereby most religious leaders would have allowed a man to divorce his wife under pretty much any circumstance, from didn't like them anymore to they were annoying to whatever reason they could divorce. And Jesus really wanted to reaffirm the life commitment of marriage and how important it was that when you marry somebody, it is for life. Now, we know that there are circumstances sometimes where these things aren't possible, where life commitment may be wanted but isn't achievable for whatever reason. And I'm not going to get into that now. But what I will say is the important thing to take from today's passage is that the laws that God set in the Old Testament pertaining to what Jesus was talking about here didn't just get completely abolished. We know that Jesus said he came to fulfill the law. And the important thing for us today is to realize that whether it's marriage, whether it's anything else, ultimately we're called to live obedient lives to God and not be lackadaisy. We know that back in the day when Jesus was around, the kind of commitment to marriage would have been very lax, would have been very relaxed. People wouldn't have really minded if you got divorced or not. It was kind of the done thing. And you might say, yeah, well, that's kind of the same today. And it does sometimes feel like that. The rates of divorce are very high. And as Christians, of course, we're trying to make sure that we live right. And it's important to see it as a life commitment. And it's important to see God's commands as ones in which we should do our best to follow. But of course, there are times when that might not be possible. But I want to encourage you that Jesus' words are good, they're affirming, and they're encouraging, and they lead us to live a life that's obedient. And that's ultimately all we can aim to do as an individual, as Christians, as followers of him, is to live an obedient life, following what he tells us to do in order to represent him really in the best way that we can. So I hope that's been an encouragement to you. Apologies for the dog barking, but I'm sure you're okay and you managed to listen through. Have a great day, and we shall see you tomorrow at the same time.